Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Seriously, dude, a girl only has one thing left of her dead father. You guilt her into giving it to you, and then you sell it and keep the money? Choosy beggar demands free car. So when my wife was in college, her dad died. My wife was very close with him, and this destroyed her. And to this day, 20 plus years, she still breaks down around that time of the year. After his funeral, my wife ended up being given the car since no one else in her family wanted to deal with it. It was a fairly new Honda Accord, and while she was driving an early 1970s VW Beetle, she couldn't bring herself to drive the car or part with it because it was all she had left. My wife had a roommate in college who was the classic slacker. He used to guilt her into doing his assignments, taking tests for him, and buying his food, as well as quite often covering his part of the rent. Let's just call him CB. Now, CB's car had broken down some months before all this happened, and he'd been driving his younger sister's car as she was living on a college campus and didn't really need to travel much. Once my wife got possession of her dad's car, CB immediately started dropping hints that he wanted it, asking almost daily what she was going to do with it, constantly saying that it was so hard to drive an older model car that just consumed gas, and basically playing the victim. And even started making nasty comments about how she was being selfish and that she must not be a real friend, all because she wouldn't give him the car. Please note that my wife's car she was actively using was at least 10 years older than his sister's. Understandably, my wife was falling to pieces at this time, so to keep the peace, she ended up telling the guy that he could use the car as long as he was careful and put the insurance in his name. At some point, my wife ended up leaving college for a few weeks to spend time with her family since they were all gathering together to have a memorial for her father, so she leaves CB with the car and heads back home. When she got back, she noticed that CB's sister's car was parked out on the street and figured that his sister must be visiting. When she went inside, there was no sister, only CB. She thought this was strange, so she asked if his sister was borrowing her car to run errands. CB then went on to explain that he just hadn't enjoyed driving the car she gave him, so he'd sold it and was putting the money aside to buy something that she chose and had decided driving his sister's car wasn't so bad after all. Suffice to say that my wife called the cops, but nothing was done since this guy had forged a bill of sale and, as she had instructed, put the insurance in his own name. She has serious trouble trusting people to this day and has some pretty serious walls in place when it comes to friends. And our second story. Lab manager doesn't want to pay for lab support, so they get what they pay for. I work in a large company where there are many separate buckets of money. I was transferred from being a core embedded member of lab staff to a specific high-profile project, but I've been continuing to train and assist in the lab test environment since I have years of experience, and it usually is only an hour or two of my day, so that people can be productive and achieve their objectives over 12 hours. Today, the lab manager told me I couldn't bill the time I helped to the lab anymore because he can only support the core staff. Okay, fine. Don't want to pay me, you don't get my efforts. A few times today, people came to me to ask for help. I felt bad because I really wanted to help, and I knew right away what the solution was and that it would take less than 10 minutes of my time to save them hours of theirs, but I need to be paid, and I have billable hours from my current project. I'm pretty sure there's some ethics violations to not charge for work or charge another project for time that you spend supporting other efforts. Sorry, I can't help until I have a charge number. I wouldn't even answer as consulting or guidance. Nothing until I have a charge number. Finally, one team was desperate after hours of not getting results and only an hour left on their 5 hours of scheduled use of the test assets with a large support team and moving parts and not having a thing to show for it. Fine, I have a charge number you can use. Whatever you need, just get it working. We can't afford to come back and redo this before it's due. Literally 2 clicks, multiple people trying to document what I did. It's like trying to write instructions on how to hit a layup. Until they've done it a million times so they know the timing, they just can't nail the buckets like mine. So until then, if they want it done, they know they're going to have to pay me to do it. And our next story. Give up on my career or move out? Okay. This happened recently, and right now things have calmed down, so it feels right to post this here. So about 2 weeks ago, my best friend, 22, had called me, 23, asking if he could be my roommate if I find a place. I was looking for a place to stay while going to college. I told him, sure, but why? But he said he'd tell me later. We both meet up a few days later and drive about an hour away from our hometown to move into the new place. We spent a few hours setting everything up and unpacking, yet he never said anything about why he wanted to move in with me so suddenly. After we were done, he sat down and explained the situation at home. He and his parents had been at each other's throats recently because he had landed a remote job after our summer internship, and they thought he was wasting his life playing on the computer. His parents have always done factory and physical labor jobs and look down on people who work from their computers because they don't know what real work is. Side note, his dad actually does his auto shop's taxes and other functions from his office and rarely does any mechanic work himself, so it's kind of hypocritical. He continues to tell me that the day before he called and asked me, they had a huge blowout that resulted in his parents giving him the ultimatum of get a real job or get out. And he says he just went to his room and started packing. I'm guessing even if I said no, he was moving out regardless. That brings us to him telling the story to me. When he was done, he looked so relieved. I believe the reason he kept so quiet during the move was because he was holding it in and trying not to go crazy. After that, we both spent the rest of the day hanging out to try and keep his mind off things. Fast forward 3 days later, his parents call him asking why his stuff's not in his room. They were gone a few days to give him some time to come to his senses, thinking he'd give up his roughly 4 years of college and internships to get a job as a mechanic starting from scratch. There's nothing wrong with mechanic or people who work labor jobs, but he's been working his butt off these last few years only for them to basically tell him to drop all that and get a job they want him to get. I leave the apartment to give him and them some privacy and take a quick walk. When I get back 20 minutes later, he's got a wide smile on his face, and he tells me the long and short of it. He apparently left a few details out before, and this time told me the whole story. Roughly around the time we started working at that paid internship, his parents had been charging him rent, $350 every month, as a motivation for him to get a real job, and the blowout they had was about him being able to pay it, despite not having a real job they had picked out. They said he needed to grow up, get real work experience, and even went as far as accusing him of stealing to get the money, so he had enough and packed up while they were gone. The phone call they had was him basically telling them he can't go back home because he's not going to change his major, current job, or career path, so he was staying at the apartment with me. I asked him if he's going to be okay. He assured me that he already explained everything to his other relatives, and they're going to try and talk to his family to see if they can convince them to understand why he wants this job and how computer work is still work. This is going to be our last 2 semesters, and the tuition's already paid off, so we're good at the moment. As the only thing we got to worry about is the rent, which we can both cover pretty well. Honestly, I was going to ask him to split this apartment with me regardless, because I found a good apartment complex that had a shuttle to our college and had 2 rooms open, but I'm still glad I could help him. He says he'll eventually start talking to his parents again, but I don't think that'll happen until after they come to their senses, or else they might lose their only son. Update. Me and my friend, let's call him Jay, got a visit over the weekend from his aunt telling us how they tried explaining to his parents the situation, but it seems like they're dead set on dying on that hill. She says that if he ever wants to move back to our hometown, he can live with her. Jay didn't seem too surprised by the news, and honestly neither am I, so he's decided to completely move away from home after college to the city a software company we've been looking at is stationed. It offers remote work, but the apartments there are surprisingly affordable. His aunt says that's okay, then gave me some overly sweet speech about how I'm a good friend for sticking by him, and even joked that we'd make great lovers, which caused an awkward moment. Update 2. Jay had a final spat with his parents, and I was in my room when it happened. I didn't hear everything, but it seems that Jay's aunt exposed what's going on to even the extended family, and his parents weren't invited to some birthday celebrations. I think the family isn't going to invite them to any family get-togethers anymore. He had them on speaker with them screaming, "It's your fault for being so stubborn. You should have just gotten a real job like we told you." And Jay firing back, "Yo, dumb A, the one who didn't want to listen? I don't care anymore. Don't call me." He hung up the phone and blocked them. He explained to me that most of the family's staying away from them now because They've been saying and doing stuff like this for a while now, and Jay getting kicked out was the last straw. My ma told me that even the neighbors know about them now. I may have told my gossiping mama about them, and so people just ain't messing with them no more. And our last story. Neighbor towed my car from my parking spot. Here's what happened. I've been in my apartment for a couple of years now, and my family and I didn't have a car, so our parking spot went unused. Mind you, my parking spot is connected in front of a different apartment complex due to changes in ownership. This is where the issue is brewing. Our neighbor was allowed to use our parking spot as long as we didn't use it for guests or something like that. I occasionally use my girlfriend's car and park there, so they learned that it's me. Now, recently I got a car. Naturally, I parked my car in my parking spot the night I bought it, May 5th. Come the next afternoon, May 6th, I went to get something from the car, and to my surprise, no car. My first thought was it got stolen. Damn, not even a whole day. Bad luck. Turns out the neighbor borrowing my parking spot had it towed in the middle of the night. She gave a nonsensical story saying she contacted the manager from the other apartment complex to ask if she can tow it, and the other manager said yes, so she called the towing company on my car in my parking spot. The bill ended up being around $450. On May 7th, when the damn tow company finally agreed to meet me there, they charged me all kinds of fees. Now my neighbor said she feels terrible and ashamed. That's great and all, but she owes me $450. Because it's not my fault she decided she had rights to my spot. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.